From 2Keto LLC, it's Keto Woman Podcast with Daisy Brackenhall.
Hello Keto Lovelies, I'm Daisy Brackenhall and I've spent most of my life struggling with my weight and confidence and have always had a difficult relationship with food. Even when I finally got to my target weight after weight loss surgery and eating low carb, I couldn't maintain it and I was miserable. Keto has given me the freedom to fall in love with food again, without the constant gain, loss, guilt, virtue cycle of before. Health and happiness is where it's at now, running on fat. Welcome to the Keto Woman Podcast. Each week I'll be chatting to inspirational women, maybe even the odd man, to discover the secrets to their success so that I can share them with you. So what is keto? Keto is a way of eating that enables you to switch your body's main fuel source from sugar to fat. Who doesn't want to be a fat burner, right? But how do we achieve this? A great place to start is by keeping carbs to 20 grams or less per day. So things like leafy greens and above ground vegetables, plus some nuts and seeds and the incidental carbs you find in things like dairy. Moderate protein scale to your lean body mass, and then fat to satiety. Once you're in the swing of things, you can tweak it to suit you. Make your own personalised keto. I'll be asking my guests each week what their keto looks like to show you just how flexible and fabulous this way of eating can be. I'm not a doctor, and most of my guests won't be either, so we can't give you medical advice. It's always best to work with your own doctor because they know you and your medical history and so have access to the bigger picture. Thank you, Suryan O, Jeannie Wagner and Christine Jong for supporting me in this podcast by making a pledge at my Patreon page. Do you want to hear your name here at the top of the show? Are you enjoying this podcast and would like to help me make more episodes? Then head to my Patreon page at patreon.com/KetoWoman or hit the support button on the Keto Woman podcast website. It means a great deal to me and you will get to headline the show just like Christine, Jeannie and Suryan did today. This week's extraordinary woman is Carol Hawkins. Carol is a 54-year-old mother of 2 daughters, wife of 32 years, and owns and runs a hearing clinic. She loves to run marathons and has even run through Disney World doing their marathon. She has lost 50 pounds after starting keto a couple of years ago and has noticed a big improvement in her running and recovery, as well as knee pain, blood pressure and GI issues. Carol uses the Maffetone and Galloway methods for running and has found they greatly improve her ability and enjoyment of running. So without further ado, let's jog on into that interview now. I apologise for that dreadful pun. Here it is. Welcome, Carol, to the Keto Woman Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's lovely to be talking to you. I thoroughly enjoy talking to these multiple women all over the world. It's fantastic.
Well, I'm so honored you chose me. I'm happy to tell my story.
Yes, and I can't wait to hear it. So, on that subject, let's get started. Tell me where it all began, what your life was like before keto and what led you to go looking for keto in the first place.
Well, I think I'm probably a pretty typical story. I was pretty thin through my 20s, and then I had my 2 daughters. And then I think I just kind of started adding a pound or 2 or 3 a year. So, after a span of time, I'm 53 or 50. How old am I? I'm 54. Forget after a while.
Yeah, me too. I always have to work it out.
I know. It's like once you hit 21, it doesn't really matter. But, I just started gradually adding weight on. And then after a while, you're 50 pounds overweight. So, I think I just started trying to figure out how to lose weight. So I kind of tried all the traditional things. I tried those dumb Slim Fast shakes where you have one for breakfast, one for lunch, and a sensible dinner. And, that didn't work.
Yeah, that was actually my first diet. It was Herbalife, actually. But, so thanks, Herbalife. That was my first ever diet.
Well, and I think I would probably be horrified if I read the ingredients on it now.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure it's horrible for you. And then, tried low fat. So, you're getting skim milk, you switch to margarine, cut all the fat off of everything. Everything tastes horrible. I remember eating rice cakes thinking you were, this is going to be so good for me. Yum.
Yeah, they strip all the saliva out of your mouth, don't they?
Yeah, it's
horrible.
So just, I tried that, and it was funny because I know some people use MyFitnessPal to kind of track things, and I did that like the 2 years before I found keto, and I was tracking my calories. Nothing happened on my weight. And it's funny to see the graph because as soon as I went keto, whoop, it went down. Whereas nothing I was trying before, it wasn't working. Which is I think is probably typical of a lot of people out there.
And so what led you to keto? Was it just a case of that was the next thing you stumbled on, or how did you find it?
It was kind of a roundabout way. Way back in 2000, I think I fell and hit my knee on a tile floor and got injured.
Ouch.
Had to do arthroscopic surgery. And then after that, the knee always felt bruised. It almost felt like somebody had just smacked your knee. So I was thinking, okay, if I get some weight off, that'll help. So I kind of figured I'd always been kind of active. So I ran in high school and, I used to swim, so do different things. But I figured, okay, I'll train for a marathon. That'll help you lose weight, obviously. So I signed up with Team in Training, which is a charity. So I was like, okay, I'll do good, raise money for a charity, lose some weight in the process. So I did a marathon in 2007, didn't lose any weight whatsoever. So then that kind of fell to the wayside. Then I think back in, 2015, my youngest daughter is a huge Disney fan, as am I, and I heard about the Disney Marathon, and you get to run through the different parks at Walt Disney World. So I was like, okay, I don't know why my thinking was I'll lose weight if I do this again, because it didn't work before, but I tried it again. So we trained for the marathon. That was fun. And then we did it again the next year. They actually have a race. It's called the Dopey Challenge, where one day you do a 5K, the next day you do a 10K, then you do a half marathon, and then you do the full marathon. So 4 consecutive days of racing. Even doing that with all the training runs, you're doing 20-plus mile training runs. I didn't lose any weight whatsoever. So, again, that wasn't working. In the meantime, I was getting shin splints and stuff, because, you're overweight running. It kind of puts some stress on your body. And I just kind of started reading different books, and it all kind of started daisy chaining, where you read this book, they mention something, you go read that book, they mention something. And I finally got on to, I think Phil Maffetone was one of the ones that was really big. He's not necessarily keto, but his plan works really well with low carb. So, he started mentioning how important nutrition was, where I was always kind of in the mindset where you could outrun your diet. If you just exercise more, you're going to lose some weight.
Right. You might have got into some calorie counting, but you weren't necessarily thinking about the specifics about what you were eating.
Exactly. So, and his plan, it's really interesting because he does heart rate training, which I've been doing over the past year or two, where you take 180 beats minus your age, and you kind of try to keep within about a 10 beat zone there. So when I go out on training runs, instead of, I used to just run and you would just, try to go for time or whatever. But you try to run, but keep your heart rate in that zone. And when I first started doing that, I was like, well, this is too easy, because you go out and you're not exhausted after your runs. You don't get all sweaty. But after a while, you can go faster and faster at the lower heart rate. So it really works well. And he's really into nutrition and stuff, so that works well. And then I also started doing, with the Disney races, they do Jeff Galloway method, where you can pick different intervals. You run for a certain amount of time, and then you take a little walking break, and then you run again, take a walking break. Where for a lot of races, people will run, and then they get tired at the end and start having to do more walking. He does it where you walk from the beginning, so you stay fresh throughout the whole race. And it really does make it nice. And mentally, you can kind of break the race up into different, sections. You don't have to say, okay, I have to run for 5 minutes now. It's, okay, let's run for 30 seconds. Okay, I'm going to take a walk break. Run, walk break. So for me, that works out really well.
Yes, I can see that working, because that's how they structure the Couch to 5K challenge, is that it starts right from the beginning with intervals and it works up to a solid run at the end. And I'm in those last weeks now where I'm just doing long runs. There's a walking, warm up and cool down at the beginning and the end. But you're just doing these long runs. And although I like the challenge of that, when I first started, I think the first biggest jump was 20 minutes, and I thought I'm never going to be able to run consistently for 20 minutes. So it's a really great sense of achievement to know that I can now run for 25, and the 30 is going to be fine.
They keep stepping you up like that. It's easy, because that's the same thing when you do marathon training. They have you do, like, okay, one day you do an 8-mile run, the next week it pops it back down to 6. And then, okay, you have to do a 10-mile run, and then you go back down to 8. So each time you're like, oh, I can never do that. You do it, and then it gets to go back down to where you're comfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it just makes it easier and easier.
Yeah, and I can see also just the logic of it. I mean, everyone these days, is talking about high intensity interval training.
Right.
And so it really makes sense to perhaps do the two alongside each other. I mean, that's my plan for when I finish the program, because I want to follow it and finish it to the end. But my plan after that is to mix it up. So maybe to do, one long run a week, because like I say, I like the challenge of it. But I know that I drop my pace. I run a lot slower when I'm doing that, because obviously I'm thinking, I've got to run for 25 minutes. I'm not going to exhaust myself, especially as my way out is downhill and I know that I'm coming uphill on the way back. So if I go too fast on the way, and I've done it once, I did it on my birthday and I thought I was going to puke and pass out. So I don't do that anymore. But I can really see the benefit of improving your pace by taking it back to that interval style training. So I can perfectly see how it would work well for you if you're running a marathon, which is 26 miles.
Yes.
To have that going back from one to the other. You also feel like you can put a bit of a sprint in then. I mean, I do when I have Joe Wiley in my ear saying you've got 1 minute left of running. That's when I pick up the pace and I push it forward and all the endorphins kick in and I feel fantastic. But I know I haven't got to maintain that. And I know that in 60 seconds she's going to say, and slow down and walk. And then you've got your rest. So it just enables you, doesn't it, to just pick up that pace a little bit in those intervals.
Yes.
And have you tried both? Have you always trained with that method, or have you done the consistent long runs as well?
My first marathon, I did just regular running, and I did end up at the end of it having to walk a lot just because, you get so exhausted.
Right, so you can really see the difference from your experience between the two.
Yes, and like I said, the heart rate training, which is Maffetone, and the Galloway method, which is the intervals, they really mesh really well, because it does help keep your heart rate down, once you get the walking breaks. So then you're not stressing your body. And a lot of the things that, with the books that I was reading, I read those. I read, I think, Mark Sisson for Primal Endurance, started reading like Chi Running. Basically, I was trying to read all these things to figure out how to not stress my body, not get shin splints and everything. And they all kind of are taking a sort of the same approach where you try to listen to your body, not push, which I was so used to from, high school sports, no pain, no gain, where that's really probably not the best thing for you. You really need to listen to your body and, take into account how you're feeling that day. I think Phil Maffetone even says, hey, if you're scheduled for, a 2-hour run and you don't feel it, don't do it, because your body's telling you something that you're not prepared to do that day. You have to listen a little bit. You can't let yourself weasel out on stuff.
There's that difference, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's the voice that says, it's really cold and it's raining outside. You really don't feel like running.
Exactly.
And then there's the voice that's telling you you've got a potential injury building if you go out.
Exactly. Yes. So there's a little bit difference there.
It's a bit like I can't remember now who it was I was talking to recently about keto intelligence, and that same voice with learning to listen to your body in what it wants to eat. Yes. And that you have to ignore it in the first few weeks of keto because it's
right, because you don't know what
it's telling you want carbs. Yeah, exactly. So you have to wait for it to smarten up a bit and then listen.
Exactly.
When it starts telling you need bacon, you know you're on the right track.
Exactly. So yeah, after my daughter and I, after we did the Dopey Challenge, that one race thing, I think I was kind of burned out on running for a while.
And did you do it in the costumes? Is it one of these ones where, you run in a...
Ours, we kind of just usually do t-shirts and a skirt but yeah, some of the races we kind of go all out. Like I have one coming up. I'm going to dress up as like Slave Tiana. They do like Slave Leia and something mashups because it's for the Star Wars race. So they're kind of fun.
It's these ones where I see these runners running in these, full body animal suits or something, and they're running a marathon. I think, how do you do that?
I kind of do more streamlined ones, so it's a running one with a theme. I think I just did one where I dressed up as like Rey from Star Wars at the last one. But in our Disney races, we try to just have fun. My main goal for this last marathon that I did in January was to be able to ride one of the Disney rides during the race. So, because we ran through one of the ones where their roller coaster is open. So you just kind of pop off of the course for a minute, go ride a roller coaster, hop back on. So they're pretty fun. And, you stop and have pictures with the characters along the way. So it's really kind of a fun, I'm definitely not doing those races for time or anything. With some of the other races that I do during the year, I might try to go faster because a lot of the races, they have corrals, which they kind of group you into different time zones so that the faster runners start first and it gets slower. As you get to the back, they get really crowded and sometimes it's hard to run if there's so many people. So you try to get a faster proof of time so you get in a better corral.
Right, yeah, so you're not getting jostled along as you run.
Exactly. And then the better corrals, then you have more time to take pictures and goof off and stuff during their races.
With Goofy, as it happens.
Exactly.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I like the stopping to go on a ride halfway through.
Yeah, it makes it a lot of fun. So, just kind of try to goof off and enjoy what you're doing. So after we did that race, I was really tired of running, I think, for a while. And in the meantime, I'd been reading a lot of books about keto. And for some reason, I think the big fat surprise was the one that kind of did it for me, where that kind of clicked a light switch. Because, I'd heard of Whole30 and stuff before, and I was like, okay, I can never do that. For some reason, I just clicked, and I went through my cupboards, got rid of all the vegetable oil and, all the packaged foods and everything, and just kind of did a whole clean sweep of my house. So I went all in keto. I didn't do the gradual, cut down stuff all at once. I just did it all at once. And, right away, I think I lost 5 pounds the first week. And like I said, my MyFitnessPal graph just started going down and down. And it's like a big stair step.
Yeah, it looked like a ski slope. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I kind of like this. This is fun. And, I think at first I was doing like the ketone strips, just checking to see how I was doing. After a while, I know those aren't very accurate, but it was kind of good encouragement for me at the very beginning.
Absolutely. I think that, yes, they're a bit of fun. And to be honest, most people see something, but there are a few people that see nothing and then they stress out about it and think they're doing something wrong. And I think that's the biggest reason for saying that they're not reliable. But yes, for most people, they're going to show up and they're just going to give you that affirmation and they're a bit of fun. But that's what I always say, is just to look at them as, something quite lighthearted. Right.
And when I first started, I did track like all my macros. I had all my percentages and was trying to hit everything right. The interesting thing is Facebook, I think I started almost the same time as Carl Franklin did, because I started January 2016. And at that time, there weren't a ton of groups. There were some groups. They didn't have the 2 keto dudes yet, but I got into a lot of the different ones, and it's interesting just all the different flavors of things out there. Some of the groups are like so dogmatic that you
militant.
have to do it our way. Yes,
oh yeah, and if you don't, basically you're wrong. And
exactly.
The comment that was always thrown to me, which just used to make me want to punch somebody, was, oh, it's you're new, you don't know what you're talking about, and sooner or later you will come to see that we are right.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, some of them get really militant on here. You have to have this much protein. No, you don't have to have it. You have to eat fat. No, you don't. So there's the main thing I got from it was there's different ways to do it. Some methods work for some people, some work for others. You really have to find what works for you.
Absolutely. And if that way works well for you, that's absolutely fine. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong.
Exactly. I mean, some people are like, no, you cannot have bell peppers at all. I was like,
yeah,
okay. You do you, I will do me, and we'll be happy. So, I think overall it took me about, 6 months to lose 50 pounds.
Wow.
How long had I been doing this for? I'm 5'9" or so I can kind of pack on a lot of weight before it really shows up. And so that's why I got to 50 pounds where I was like, oh, I really need to do something about this. And I was still, obviously I was doing marathons and stuff when I was still overweight. So it wasn't really affecting me that way, but I just wasn't happy, being that pudgy. So when I lost the weight, I think I lost 7 inches off of my waist, about 6.5 off my hips, 4.5 off my thighs, and I went down about 3 or 4 dress sizes. So I was like size 16 or so. Now I'm down to 10. I could fit some 8s. So
wow, and at your height, yes, that's
yeah. So and it was so easy. I love it when I always see these posts about, oh, it's so restrictive and stuff. It's like, it really isn't. I made an Alfredo sauce the other day with heavy cream, butter, cheese. This stuff tasted awesome, but before this, I would have said, oh, no, there's no way you can eat that and lose weight.
You have to pinch yourself, don't you?
Exactly.
This food is so delicious. It's so decadent. It can't be diet food. It can't be.
No. Well, and that's when I first started, I did try to make a lot of the keto, I guess I call them keto cheats, like the bread. And I know some people make the bread and cookies and everything like that. Everything I tried, it was just like, this is just not my thing. So, most of the time I'm fine without bread and stuff. So I don't really even bother making the keto breads, which I know a lot of people do. But I actually just saw a tweet today. Somebody said, a sandwich is not a meal. Whereas, before you used to always think, okay, I'll have a sandwich for lunch. And that was just sandwich was lunch all the time. But now I don't even think of that as something I want to eat. Exactly.
It was the assumption of the convenience of it, really. But apart from the fact that I suppose it's easy to pick up, I mean, I'd rather just have the sandwich fillings or,
right.
Wrap a big lettuce leaf around the sandwich fillings and not actually waste tummy space on the bread. It's just, don't need it.
Yeah, and sometimes when I've said, okay, I'm going to splurge and have a piece of bread, you go to have it and it's just like, this doesn't really even taste like anything. It's cardboardy. And yeah, so my taste buds have kind of changed where I don't even, want that, basically.
So have you been quite consistent with how you keto from the start, or have you seen a change with what you do over the, what is it? It must be at least a couple of years now.
2 years. I've kind of changed. When I first started, I was very strict. I was, like I said, I was counting my macros, so I was staying like 20 net. So didn't really allow anything outside. Now, and when I first started, I did a lot of the keto fat bombs. I loved this one. I had it was a raspberry cheesecake dipped in dark chocolate. So
sounds delicious.
It really is good. So I think that kind of helped swap me over where, so you didn't feel deprived because, hey, you get this yummy, morsel. And so that kind of helped me get over. But now I really don't even bother making those things anymore. But I think at first it was nice to have that to kind of lead me into it. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's right. And I think that's a very good point. And it really depends what you're like. For some people, having those keto treats, I call them, and the baked goods and the breads and all those other things. For some people, having those in the early stages is what gets them through.
Right.
For other people, it's too triggering and too much of a reminder, especially having them straight after they've had the carb alternatives. It's too much of a reminder that they don't quite stack up, and you're more likely to fall back off. So it's a really difficult balance, and it's figuring out what kind of personality type you are. I always think, in some ways, the best way is to spend, say, the first month maybe being really strict and really basic and just getting through, eating all the, lots of fat and lots of satiating fat and protein, and just getting you through, not worrying too much about macros. And actually then, if you want to start experimenting with some of these things, because it's always the real food porn worthy pictures, they're the treats, aren't they? They're the amazing looking cakes or, things like that. And so you do get tempted into wanting to start experiment. But if you've had that period of time without the carbs and your taste buds have, changed, your palate has changed, and then you start making them, you think, oh my goodness, this tastes amazing.
Right.
Because you haven't got that comparison.
Yeah, because I'll make something, I was like, oh, this is really good. And my husband tries it. He isn't keto. And he'll go, oh, no, I don't like that. I was like, okay, well, more for me.
Exactly.
That's fine.
So it's just having that interval in between can make all the difference. But again, just as we were saying before, it's all about figuring what works for you and what you're like.
Yeah, you have to figure out individually. And I know some people, like with the fat bombs, they would just eat 10 of them, all at once, whereas I could do 1 or 2. That was good. So again, it is figuring out your personality, how it works with you, and what method is going to work for you.
Exactly.
And that's the same thing with, with all those keto approaches. You do have to find the one that you're comfortable with. That's why I did kind of end up in the keto dudes, because they were really not very dogmatic. It was kind of find what works for you and go with that. We're not going to tell you you can only have this much protein or you'd have to have this much or, fat and everything. So it worked really well for me.
You're a grown up. You can,
exactly.
You can work it out for yourself. And
well, and I do like, reading up on the research, seeing what is coming out lately and basing things on that versus just your opinion on things.
Absolutely. And I think, again, it's figuring out what kind of person you are. I like to look at everything, look at all the different groups, look at all the different versions of keto, and then find what works for me within that. Whereas some people approach that and they just, it's overwhelming, I don't know what to do. And they do just need to find not necessarily one person they want to follow, but one sort of method within that range that they can just follow until they know what they're doing, until they found their keto feet, and then they can start branching out.
Right.
But I can totally understand that concept of it being overwhelming. I mean, that's what I find fascinating. I like going down 100 different rabbit holes at once. That's, that's my thing. I love it. But I can see how that would just be overwhelming for some people.
Right. But going back to my knee, I did have arthroscopic on it, and it was still sore and everything. I just realized within the past few months, I was like, oh, my knee isn't sore anymore. So I don't have any pain in there anymore. And I think a lot of it is the inflammation goes down when you're on keto. I notice, I'm starting to get the old lady arthritis in my thumbs, but I don't feel it as much when I'm eating more clean. If I do have more carbs, I notice that I get that more. One of the other things I tried was gluten-free, because I was always having some GI issues, I'd eat and I'd have to go to the restroom right away. And I had like a rash on the back of my arms. I think it's called Keratosis pilaris. Anyway, there's little like chicken skin bumps on the back of my arms.
Yes, I know. Yeah, that's what it's commonly called, isn't it? Chicken skin.
Yes. And I didn't realize, I went to the dermatologist. They give you a topical lotion to put on it, but that didn't help it at all. And once I went keto, that actually went away. So I was pretty shocked, but I read up on it more, and a lot of times it is a gluten intolerance, or, that's a symptom of it. And then also once I went keto, my GI issues went away. So, just those things, the inflammation and the stomach issues and things like that got a lot better on keto. Plus the weight drops off pretty easily. So that was nice. And my weight dropped off when I wasn't running, because like I said, I took time off like in January after that one race, and I went keto. I didn't start running again until the spring. So all of that weight loss was no exercise. And when I started running again, it was just because I felt so good. I wanted to get out and go run. So it was really kind of enjoyable once I started back up, because, you're less weight. So I didn't have, a lot of times when you're heavier, you get chafing and stuff when you're running.
Oh, tell me about it.
You like dread getting into the shower after the runs.
Oh, the chafing. I mean, it wasn't from running for me, but when I first moved to France, I was twice the size I am now. And gardening is what I do. And it gets very, very hot here in the summer. And I used to get some chafing all year round, really. But in the summer, you can imagine, was just the worst. And bits used to rub, especially at under my tummy overhang, my boob overhang, the tops of my thighs. And I used to have these welts. I mean, I used to cry. They were so painful, really, really painful. And it was just the bane of my life. And I had lasting scars from them. They got that bad.
Boy.
And so to not have that is amazing. So you must have noticed the difference to every part of your running, presumably when you went back after that period of time with rest, with less inflammation in your knee and things. I mean, you must have really noticed a difference.
Yeah, it was just really enjoyable when I started again. So that was nice. And then I was doing the heart rate training and stuff. So it was, you just kind of have a ton of energy and got to take it somewhere, so took it out on the road.
It's a great way to get rid of it, isn't it? I've noticed if I've got wound up and stressed about something, if I go out and have that run, you kind of
get to work through all your problems and stuff.
Exactly.
In your head.
Yeah, it's a combination thing, isn't it? It's the physical, just getting rid of that cortisol and everything else that's coursing around your system. But yes, absolutely, that it's the mental thing. You just think things over, and by the time you've come back, you've got a solution to whatever it was that was plaguing you.
Exactly.
So tell me what your day-to-day keto looks like.
Generally, I'm a skip breakfast type of person, which that's one nice thing about keto is that, before this, you're always told, you have to have 3 meals a day. You have to eat breakfast. I was never hungry at breakfast. And now I love it because I get up, I don't eat until lunchtime. So, and at lunch, I don't do the sandwiches anymore. Usually have like a bunless burger or, have a salad with some protein on it, things like that. And then for dinner, kind of the same thing. I kind of I like trying different recipes and stuff. One of the ones I love is twice baked cauliflower, which is cauliflower, you mash it up or steam it and mash it up, and then you add cream cheese, sour cream, cheddar cheese, chives. So it's basically like a loaded baked potato, but with the cauliflower. And that is to die for. I love that.
It makes a difference, doesn't it? That sort of reheating stage.
Yes.
The cooking it, the processing it, and then I do the same, and then I cook it in the oven. And I often find with reheating leftovers in the microwave the next day, the more you reheat, the more it seems to taste like mashed potato, which was one of my favorites.
So that's, pretty simple. And I know a lot of people say, it's hard to eat when you go out, I don't really find that. I did have one restaurant I went to, and I asked the lady to not have a bun, and she just gave me this look like, you're a moron or something. And of course she was a little pudgy, so I was, it's like kind of thinking, well, maybe you should try it too. The one thing about keto when you first start, it's hard to not try to tell everybody about it.
Yeah, convert everyone you come across. They refused me, actually. I went to McDonald's a while ago here in France, and and I said, just leave the bun, I don't want it.
Right.
Apart from anything else, I really hate waste. So
exactly.
I would rather somebody, kept that bun to give to somebody else, and whatever small part of their profit margin is, you keep it. I'm not asking to pay less. I just, I don't want to take it and throw it away. They point blank refused. They wouldn't. They wouldn't do it.
Oh boy!
So I had to have it with the bun, scrape everything off, and throw the bun away.
I don't like that, because then if you're getting a cheeseburger, the cheese sticks to the bun. It's
exactly.
Like, I want all of
you
my
lose
cheese.
some of it. Yeah, don't you go skimping on my cheese.
Yeah, I find more and more now it's easy when you go out to eat. People really don't blink an eye. Like, I go to Five Guys a lot, and all they ask is if it's an allergy or not. They don't ask you why you don't want a bun. So it's getting easier, and really you can find what you need to eat pretty much anywhere. Like if I go out for Mexican food, I'll get fajitas. You just don't eat the tortilla, but you get all the yummy fillings, and pretty much any restaurant you can figure out something to eat.
Exactly. Often it's a case of just sort of ditching the casing, really, isn't it? I mean, some people who are hypersensitive to some of the sauces and things, I suppose, have to be a bit more careful. But there are things like, in the UK, kebabs are very popular, and actually they're pretty well a perfect keto food. You just ditch the casing, like I say, the pita bread. But the insides is just meat and salad and mayonnaise, a bit of hot sauce or something. Yeah, it's right. Perfect, isn't it? So, people often say, it must be so difficult to eat when you're out, but actually no, because
it's really
most
not.
fast food joints are pretty keto friendly, aren't they?
Right. And even I just went to a pizza place with my sister, and it's one where you kind of build your own pizza. And I ended up just eating the toppings off of mine. So, you could still have pizza, you just don't have the bread part of it. You still get the, pepperoni and cheese and veggies.
Exactly. And some places will even cook it for you, won't they, without the base?
Right.
They'll just cook the toppings for you.
Exactly.
Which is something I've been doing lately, actually. I don't have an oven at the moment, and I've been meaning to try for ages making pizza in a frying pan. I think you'd probably call it skillet.
Oh yeah, I think I saw somebody do that the other day. It looks yummy.
Amazing. So, all this messing around with the different kind of pizza crusts you make in the oven.
Right.
No, none of that. You just put a layer of cheese in a frying pan.
That's the good stuff anyway.
Yeah. And you cook it until it goes crispy. And it is the thinnest, crispiest pizza crust that you can, that old test where if you can slice it and pick it up. Perfect. I've never had that with any other kind of keto pizza. And it is just, it's just cheese and then toppings. And I
right.
put more cheese on the top. So
yeah,
perfect.
And I found since I started, I tend to not make a lot of the bread substitutes just because you get so used to not eating it that it tastes good without it. So it's pretty easy, I think.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing with when we were talking about, in fast food places and skipping the carbohydrate bit. And you often, it's not like you even need a replacement for it.
Right.
Our appetites have decreased a bit. And so we're happy with what there is there after you've taken the carbohydrate away. It's not like you need to add, extra meat or extra vegetables or something. It's fine as it is, isn't it?
Well, and it's funny because I eat at Panera a lot, and you get a side with that. So they're like, oh, do you want the bread or do you want chips? And I was like, I don't want either. And they're like, no, you get it with your meal. I was like, really? I don't need them. Thank you. But, they kind of push it on you sometimes. But yeah, I just don't feel the need to have that stuff anymore.
Yeah, just give me the good stuff.
Yeah.
And you don't get that stuffed feeling that you tend to get with carbs anyway, do you?
Exactly. Especially, like Thanksgiving where everybody's like, oh, I have to undo my pants. I'm so stuffed. I find that when I eat keto, I don't get that heavy feeling. You just get satisfied and you're not hungry, but you're not bloated or anything. So it's just much more comfortable all around, I feel.
Yeah, it's Christmas Day in the UK. We have our massive Christmas dinner, and then everyone goes into a carb coma on the sofas in front of the TV and falls asleep. Usually it's just about perfect for when the Queen's speech comes on. So, yeah.
Poor Queen. Everyone's sleeping through her speech.
Poor Queenie gets ignored. Yeah. What have you found? We were talking a bit earlier about the menopause. What kind of impact have you found that keto has had on that?
I haven't had any symptoms whatsoever. I just, stopped having a period last year, and I was waiting for all the horrible stuff everybody says is going to kick in, hot flashes and moodiness and everything like that. But really, I haven't had anything, just no period, and that's about it. So, who knows what that's from, but if it's keto or genetics, thanks, Mom. But yeah, I've just kind of sailed through so far. Knock on wood.
Perfect. I mean, yeah, because some people just go on for years and years, don't they, of hot flushes and all sorts of things that just aren't very pleasant. So nice to avoid that.
Yes.
So what's next with your running? What have you got planned so far for this year?
Next month, my daughter and I are doing another Disney race where we're doing a 10K and a half marathon. So,
the fun one.
Exactly. So I have my little outfits planned.
Oh, what are you wearing?
It's a Star Wars race. So for one of the races, a big group of us got together and we're all having like stormtrooper shirts. So kind of running as a group. And then for the half marathon, I'm doing a Slave Leia Princess Tiana mashup. So
wow.
Like a little sports bra. It's going to be a little bit more than a bikini, but it's just fun to dress up and, take pictures along the way. And so those are just kind of fun runs.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that.
Yes. And it's fun running with my daughter. We got a lot of bonding time in over, all of our training. You're just out running and talking and, so I really appreciated getting to do that with her. So kind of my fun little running buddy.
Yeah, great thing to do together, isn't it?
Yes.
You've just done a run, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just did the Little Rock 10K and full marathon. So, kind of did my intervals along the way. So kind of plugged along, finished them both, could walk afterwards. It was actually funny. My sister, she lives in the area, so I went to go stay with her for the race, and she went to go cheer me on at the end, and she said, oh my gosh, everybody is like limping around after the finish, but I wasn't having any issues. So that was really nice. I guess just the reduction in inflammation, it makes recovery so much easier. I wasn't having issues that, you could see a lot of people obviously were having. Yes,
I was going to ask you what happens at that typical. I mean, I know my brother's told me it's usually at about the 20-mile mark when in the UK call it hitting the wall. In America, I think you call it bonking, that you just hit that point where it feels like everything's gone and you can't go any further.
I'm done.
But you don't seem to have problems with that.
No, I found since I switched, I've run races on keto and then before, and I find now I have a lot more energy. I don't get as sore. I don't get as tired. And I can finish the race, staying strong. So it's much more enjoyable running not on sugar. And before, I used to have to take a lot of fuel with me on my runs. So they have stuff called goo or gel, just kind of the sugary, gross stuff that you have to take every couple of hours to keep your energy up if you're running on carbs. And I used to hate taking that stuff. I would have to kind of steel myself before I took it just because it's kind of nasty.
Can really mess with your digestive system, can't it? I remember Chrissy saying it made her feel pretty ill.
Yeah, a lot of people get nauseous. They have to use the restroom a lot and stuff with it. So, it's just
not very convenient in the middle of a long run, really.
No. So now I can go like 4 hours. I don't have to take anything with me. I, take water, but I don't have to take a bunch of fuel or, snacks or anything because I'm not hungry and I have enough energy. So it's much more enjoyable now. I don't think I think I took like a Justin's nut butter this last run, and I didn't even finish it. I had a little bit, and I was like, okay, I'm not hungry. But everybody else has a ton of gels in their little pack and stuff. So I just like it a lot better now.
Yeah, it sounds like the perfect thing to take with you just in case you do need something.
Yes.
And also, what about the impact of the interval methods that you've mentioned, the Galloway method in particular? I expect that has also had an impact on how you perform over the race. But what kind of system do you use? Do you use some kind of consistent interval system every time? Do you switch it up during the race? How does that work?
When I first started, I actually did Galloway before I went keto too, so I kind of have experience with that on both ends of the thing. I mean, it does help. I still feel better now, even more than I did when I just did Galloway. Usually now, when I first started, I would do run 30 seconds, walk 30 seconds, run 30, walk 30, and kind of do that throughout the whole race. As I've gotten a little bit more fit now, I usually now do about run 90 seconds, walk 30, run 90. And, during a race, if I do tend to get more tired or if it's just a bad day or something, I can always shorten my run sections. You just kind of have to listen to your body and kind of, base it on that. So I kind of do that. I have noticed, on the running, my fingers don't swell as much anymore because, I used to get big sausage fingers by the end of a race. Now that doesn't happen. I don't get all the chafing. So, there's just a lot of benefits besides, just weight loss. It's the GI, less inflammation, just a lot of different things like that. And, I know I'm never going to be the fastest runner, but I'm kind of just out there trying to better myself and challenge myself. So that's kind of why I like to do a lot of those, double races on the weekends, just to kind of push myself a little bit. And hey, if I keep running and I'm still healthy in my 90s, maybe I'll get on the age group podium. But that's my goal. It's not just winning a race. It's just challenging myself and having something to work towards.
Yeah, interval training seems to be touted by a lot of people as the best method to use for all sorts of forms of exercise. So it makes sense that it would work over a long distance run like that. It sounds a bit counterintuitive that you'd think by alternating running and walking that it's going to take you longer to complete the race than if you just ran consistently. But actually, you can end up with better times, can't you?
Yeah, most people end up going a little bit faster just because those walk breaks give you enough time to recuperate, and then you have more energy when you are doing the run sections. And so most, they recommend doing the walk breaks from the very beginning of the race so that you stay fresh throughout versus waiting until you're tired and then putting them in, because then, you're kind of behind the bus at that point. So, you just do it from the beginning. Plus it gives your muscles, a little bit of variety. So I think that might help not getting as sore also because, the walking muscles versus running, it's a little bit different. So I just find it helps a lot. And then the other thing, I can't remember if I already mentioned it or not, but I do heart rate training where, I try to keep myself in a safer zone. I actually don't do that on the races, but when I'm training, I do. I think I read Primal Endurance, and there's this kind of more a holistic view where you're looking at your nutrition, you're looking at sleep, stress, and everything. You're trying to reduce all the stress on your body so that you can perform better. So, when you're keeping your heart rate lower when you're exercising, then that helps reduce the stress so you can perform better overall.
Yeah, so it makes sense that if you're applying that principle everywhere else in your life, it makes sense that you apply it to your running as well.
Right.
Yeah, all sounds very sensible and obviously works well for you. It sounds like everything is going well. Your knee's behaving itself. Your running's going well. You're down a few dress sizes. Everything's on the up.
Yes, so far so good. So I really enjoy it.
Yes, I can see that, and I love seeing the pictures that you post after every run you've done, and the real joyful triumph on your face.
It is funny looking over, most of the races, they take photos of you during the race. And luckily, most of the ones I actually am smiling, even during the middle of the race, see the photographer kind of wave at them. Or even when I'm not looking at them, I look like I'm enjoying myself. So I do find it enjoyable.
And that's the whole point. I mean, it's, I know it's something that you do to challenge yourself, but I think with any form of exercise, the only way to make sure you carry on doing it is to enjoy it.
Right. You have to find something you love. And running isn't for everybody. Some people like bicycling, swimming, yoga, whatever floats your boat, just find it and go for it.
I think the added bonus of something out in the fresh air, I do think makes the difference.
Oh, yeah. I love it. It was funny. I used to work at Disneyland in California when I was growing up, and my one thing when I went to go get the job was, I don't care where I work, I just want to be outside, because I don't want to be inside some, shop or somewhere. I got to be outside in the fresh air. So that was my one stipulation when I hired on.
I'll do anything, just put me outside.
Exactly.
Well, it's been fantastic talking to you today. Perhaps you could share a top tip with the listeners to round us up.
My top tip, I guess it's to take kind of a holistic approach to your training. Like I was saying, you not just focusing just on your running and getting in the miles, but you also, have to look at your sleep, your stress levels, and especially your nutrition. You can't outrun a bad diet. I was proof of that because I was running like crazy and still wasn't, losing weight or anything. You do need to listen to your body and be flexible. Because especially like with keto, some people need more protein, some less, and some people need more fat, some less. Some people steer clear of dairy or artificial sweeteners. Everybody's different. It's like Monty Python's Life of Brian. Yes, we're all different. But we really are, and you just have to figure out what makes your engine tick, and, what works for someone else might not necessarily work for you. So it's all being intuitive with yourself and kind of listening to yourself.
Yes, exactly. And playing around with different things. And like you say, find out what suits you best. But also remember that things are never static. So be aware of your own body. Right. And be prepared to adapt as you go, depending on maybe what you've read or what does work for someone else. And you think, oh, that sounds interesting. I'm going to give that a go.
Right.
Just play around with it a bit.
Yeah. And keep up. Luckily now they're doing more research into ketogenic and low carb diets and stuff. So it's always interesting to find out what the latest things are and, kind of keep an open mind on what the research actually shows us versus, just going on how you feel, emotion wise. You do have to kind of stick with the science is my view.
Exactly. And I think when you do that, when you get in tune with yourself and you get a bit more confidence in experimenting with finding what works for you, you start believing and trusting in yourself, and you come to have self-assurance and faith in your own judgment. You're the expert of you, and you do have the answers.
Yes.
I really like that keto gives you a sense of empowerment and the ability to stand up for yourself, that you do know best.
Yes.
Not to be bamboozled by other people who often tell you they think they know better than you, because they don't. You know best.
Precisely.
So it's empowering. And I think especially for women, we quite often get a bit used to people trying to tell us what to do. So when you know yourself well and you can say with confidence, no, I know what works for me, and that's what I'm going to do. Well, thank you so much for today, Carol. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to all your running exploits in our Keto Bitches running group.
Yeah.
I love that group. It's nice because, we do have people of all experience levels and, get to encourage each other and see how people are progressing. And it's nice just seeing people have fun and, going out there.
Exactly. That's what it's all about. And I do really like it. Like you say, when you have people with different experience, because they're the kind of people that it's great to turn to when you're just starting out to find out all these different methods. And I think it was you who first told me about this, the interval training method. And yeah, it's fascinating. And I found with the runs that I quite like the challenge of a consistent long run, but it does feel very different.
Right.
To the intervals, and it's nice to switch it up, and like you say, you can feel different parts of your body working. It's interesting.
I know you're doing the Couch to 5K, and there's a lot of it is interesting to hear what people are doing and what works for them, so then you can try different things and kind of experiment again.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Daisy.
To get the resources and links from the show, please go to ketowomanpodcast.com. Are you my next extraordinary woman? Maybe you've got an idea for a show, a topic you want to hear about. Let me know how I can tickle your earbuds by dropping me a line at daisy@ketowomanpodcast.com. If you fancy joining me on this exciting adventure and want to help me create new episodes, please go to my Patreon page at patreon.com/KetoWoman, or simply hit the support button on the Keto Woman podcast website. It's thanks to the two keto dudes that I'm hosting this podcast, so please consider heading to their Patreon page at patreon.2keto.com and help them bring you more podcasts like this one. Please help other people hear about and find this podcast by reviewing the show on iTunes and Facebook. Every star, preferably 5 of course, and review helps. It doesn't go unnoticed by me, the people who regularly like, share and comment on my posts. Your support means the world to me. Thank you. This week's quote is from Nina Kusksik. Before I give you the quote though, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her because she's really, really interesting and definitely an extraordinary woman. Born in 1939, Nina was a natural athlete who competed in cycling and skating in her youth. When she was 15, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile barrier, and something about that accomplishment stuck with her. But she didn't find her own talent for running until after she'd gotten married, gone to nursing school and had kids. Inspired by a $1 copy of Bill Bowerman's instructional book, Jogging, Nina started to go out for runs. She trained with men, including her husband, and in 1969 she ran the Boston Marathon, unofficially, because women weren't allowed to enter. She finished in 3 hours 46 minutes, but the time didn't appear in the results like the men's did. It occurred to her that something was seriously wrong with the sport's rules. In 1972, 8 women, including Nina, showed up for the 1972 Boston Marathon and ran under the new AAU rules. Her time of 3 hours, 10 minutes, 22 seconds was finally included in the official results. She was the first female champion. A few months later, at the 1972 New York City Marathon, Nina and 5 other women changed the sport forever. They huddled together just before the Central Park start. When the gun went off, they sat down, protesting women's separate start status. After the press got their story, the ladies got up and started running. Nina and a young runner named Pat Barrett finished all 4.5 loops of Central Park. She was the first woman to triumph in New York and Boston in the same year. She returned to New York in 1973 and won again. Nina kept up the fight at the 1972 AAU convention. She brought a lawsuit prepared by ACLU lawyers demanding that the separate but equal starting line requirement be taken off the books. They won the case and the rule was dropped. At the age of 38, Kusik ran her fastest marathon, 2 hours, 50 minutes and 22 seconds. The same year, she completed the annual NYRR 50-mile race in Central Park in 6 hours, 35 and 53 seconds, an American record. She was among the group that successfully lobbied for a women's marathon to be added to the 1984 Summer Olympics. Though she never got to run on the stage, she relished Joan Benoit's win that year. Now 74, Nina has completed 80 marathons. She returned to Central Park in 2012 to participate in the 40th anniversary celebration of the race she co-founded, the Mini, and walked the race with friends. She was recognised by many and thanked by some, and was quietly happy to be part of something she loves. What a story. So this is a quote from her. Running gives freedom. When you run, you can determine your own tempo. You can choose your own course and think whatever you want. Nobody tells you what to do. Bye-bye, Keto Lovelies.